At first, why am I even thinking so much about the opinions and obsessing over the thoughts of other people anyway? It's because there's something lacking within myself. And so that's what I want to address with these points, right? And that's what I think is really important. And I'm still thinking about it because I don't know if this might even be more important, if these 2 points might be more important than the other 8 steps that I'll be taking. All right, so it's actually been a good few days since the last time that I did one of these, but I figured I did a little bit more journaling, and I figured that now would be a good time to continue. So let me just find, if I remember correctly, so I left off on the part specifically where I was trying to organize the symptoms and kind of consequences and basically the essence of the problem. I was trying to organize it down into a concrete grouping of things. And so that's something that I wrote down and that I will be putting on screen at somewhere now while I go over these. But so here I said I'll condense my understanding of the problem and what I've written into something that's less complex and easier to visualize so that I can start to work on a solution. And that's kind of where we left off last time. So the first thing that I noticed is hyper-awareness and negative interpretations of the actions of those around me. I will take things personally. Now, I tried thinking about why. I think my brain rationalizing everything to fit into and provide evidence for a framework of inferiority, right? This pre-existing framework. A residual fear of bullying that results from childhood. Automatically placing people in a hierarchy that is both misrepresentative of reality and non-existent, and projection, which is not something that I expected. And I think that's something that I wrote about already. There's not much new here. I'm just kind of consolidating what I have already written about. And so the next thing would be a difficulty just generally connecting with other guys. And so now, why? I think those mainly come from 2 things. Residual fears that come from bullying during childhood, like I mentioned before. I was always bullied by groups of guys, and that's kind of the group that I was always ostracized from as a kid. Usually, I wasn't at least as heavily bullied by girls, and they were just generally easier to talk to. Then there's also an outdated self-image where I feel like I'm still the boy that I was a decade ago, right? And so I think those 2 things contribute to that. Finally, general feelings of discomfort in environments that are not mine and an unreasonably high amount of concern over bothering or affecting other people. The reasons why are, I think that childhood trauma is the main thing here. A hesitance towards taking up space as a result of my feelings of inherent inferiority. And then, again, tying in with the childhood trauma is just deep-seated desire to remain unnoticed and unobtrusive, right? And there's a lot behind that I don't particularly want to get into right now. So the rest is not as relevant to the specific journal entry. So those are the kind of the 3 main things that I've narrowed this problem down to. Okay. So between those moments, I took some time, and let me just check I'm still recording. Chill. Okay. So I took some time, and then I came back to look at it. So looking back at these, it feels like the first problem is definitely the biggest and has the most consequences. By that, I'm referring to my hyper-awareness and negative interpretations of the actions of those around me. From there, the second is a bit more subtle, but still present in many interactions, and that's just the whole thing with interacting with other guys. Finally, the third is prevalent, but with consequences that aren't as severe as the first 2 generally, at least not socially, right? And that's the one about discomfort in environments. So now that I better understand the problem and have simplified it into something more tangible, what are the steps that I can take to solve it? And so I just kind of had this working in the background in my head. And these are the steps that will work for me. If this is something similar that you're dealing with, right, I would probably encourage you to just give it some thought. And as you go through your day, try and just kind of like keep it in the background. You might have a few insights as you work on other things, as you do anything else, right? If you're focused too hard on thinking about this, you might not come up with that many strategies or solutions that you can take to approach it. For me, what definitely worked was just like taking a step back, thinking about it, but not so intensely, kind of having that diffuse thinking instead of focused thinking. And so these are a bunch of insights that I had that I realized would be good steps that I can take in order to kind of address this problem and begin solving it. So on a high level, I think one thing I need to do is to go back and address the bullying that I experienced as a kid, right? So I have to understand what's going on there. What are those memories? What are they influencing? Why? How? So I need to address that. I also need to stop viewing social interactions and situations as a hierarchy. As I mentioned before, regardless of whether or not it exists, it's not particularly useful. It also will only serve to hold me back if that's something that I'm thinking about. Not only that, I mean, I didn't write this today, like this is a while ago, and as I've just been kind of trying to incorporate this, I've really been thinking about it, and I noticed that if I can just shift my perspective, there really isn't like this idea of that kind of hierarchy is flawed in many ways. And it's not something that, again, I'm hesitant to say because there's so many different people with different opinions and everything. And I'm not talking about what is or not or is not the case. But in terms of just my own experience, once I've like worked towards stopping to view things as a hierarchy, I just noticed that everything is, I think viewing things as a hierarchy only sets you back. It is so much easier and so much more genuine and enjoyable and free-flowing and organic to interact with people when you're not thinking about some form of hierarchy that exists in your head. So I think that's a good thing to do there. That's the second one. From there, I need to address my own hypocritical behavior that leads to projection. And this is, again, talking about the projection from before, but realizing that because of this mental image or this mental kind of view of a hierarchy that I had, how I might sometimes be operating on my own perceptions of that hierarchy, which is ridiculous because that is exactly the thing that brings me a certain amount of anxiety or insecurity when I imagine other people operating on that hierarchy, right? But in reality, no one else is doing it. It's just me, right? And yeah, so that's that hypocritical behavior and that projection is something that I want to address as well. Along with that, I need to realistically take a look at how far I've come since I was a child so that I can see and recognize for myself that I am no longer the person that I used to be. Everyone grows, everyone goes through changes, right? And I've gone through many changes since then. And I need to be able to kind of accept that and to move on, really, to let go of the person I used to be, but also the resentment for the person I used to be, and understand that I am now the person that I am now, right? And that there has been progress made, right? And things have changed. Some things positive, some things negative, but everything has changed. Life moves on. And so I just want to like take some time to acknowledge that I have changed, right? And that that it isn't helpful anymore for me to be operating using old strategies and behaviors and frameworks, these old patterns in the person that I am now, in the life that I'm living now. So that's the next one. From there, I need to get myself comfortable with taking up space, right? This is just a comfort thing. If I'm uncomfortable in certain environments, it's just a thing of like throwing myself into the discomfort and getting comfortable with it by just taking those actions, right? Because really that's all in my head, and most things don't concern other people. The things that I feel nervous about doing around other people, like taking a phone call, for example, I don't care when anyone does it around me, right? And chances are that nobody cares. So that's just one thing. The next thing is that I need to chill a bit with the narcissism and recognize that it's not all about me and to focus on others, right? And so this seems kind of weird, but I think that narcissism, or at least like a kind of narcissistic style of thinking, is incorporated into feelings of inferiority. Because, for example, when I'm back here talking about my own feelings of inferiority and my misinterpretations of everyone's actions and my ideas as to what other people are saying about me or how they're treating me based on how they might feel in this kind of hierarchy, the common thread throughout all this is that I have this kind of paranoid idea that other people are thinking about me or judging me or putting me below them or any manner of things, which they are probably not doing because I'm just not that important, right? And so that is something that I need to address as well, because the source of all those thoughts, in a sense, is also on the level of I'm thinking that everything is about me. And it's not. I'm taking everything personally, but it's not. Things aren't about me. Stop focusing on myself. Focus more on other people, right? So that's a change that I want to make as well, and I think that's a good step to take. Let me make sure I'm still recording because I've had far too many bad experiences with this. Cool. Yeah. All right. So let's see. Where were we? Pushing myself to engage in situations with other guys more and build just more male friendships. I guess that one's self-explanatory. It's similar to the other one where it's like I just need to thrust myself into these situations and start realizing that I'm worried about nothing. Then there's change my mental framework of reality and self-talk, right? Recognize that it's not a hierarchy and that people do generally want me around. And that has nothing to do with the hierarchy. It's not like convince myself that I'm higher up on this hierarchy or anything. It's convince myself that none of that matters, right? Like, I'm just a person, and people, if I'm interacting with people, chances are they generally want me around, right? I have friends. My friends will want me around. I have acquaintances, people I interact with, people who enjoy interacting with me, people who enjoy talking with me and hanging out with me, right? And those people exist. And those people do want me around. And I do have something to offer to people, right? And like, people do care about what I have to say, just on like at a basic level, the same way that I care about what others have to say as well, right? And I'm generally on good terms with a lot of people. And it's just kind of like recognizing that, I don't know, just that it's chill. I don't have to worry so much, right? And so I want to change that self-talk more to be on that level, right? And again, it's not like about some hierarchy or anything, right? Because I don't think that, again, I don't believe that it's useful to think of any form of hierarchy, but even if you do, right, it's probably not productive to just imagine yourself as being at the top of some imagined hierarchy, right? Because those are actually the kind of people that are generally disliked, right? The people who think that they're all that, the people who think that who have some level of entitlement, who think that they're above everyone else, right? No one likes that kind of person, right? And so that's not what I'm talking about. Here I'm talking specifically just recognizing that it's not about a hierarchy, and it's that people are generally just nice, And so, yeah, that's one thing. Finally, now we got the last two here. I also need to improve on my own self-confidence, which comes from a combination, I think, of having honesty, integrity, and challenging myself, right? And so this isn't exactly what I mean, but I'll get to it later. But I think, yeah, I'll talk about this later. The next one is similar. So on a similar note, I think working to achieve competency in something is important, right? And so these two are very specific, and they're actually kind of different from the other ones in that they don't directly seem to focus on inferiority or a hierarchy or any of these mental things or kind of narratives I've been telling myself, memories, any of that kind of thing, right? It's kind of separate. So looking back through all these, I feel as though they roughly fall into three different categories: reflection, behavior, and development. So I'll go into these one by one. Reflection means going back and addressing my memories and my experiences. Hold on, I gotta drink some water. Right, so reflection means going back and addressing my memories and experiences, really trying to understand myself and where my self-talk and behaviors come from, and working to rewrite the narrative into one that I actually do want, one that is productive and healthy. Addressing my experiences with bullying as a kid, re-examining the hierarchies that I create in my mind, recognizing the progress I've made since I was a child, and changing my mental framework and self-talk all fall under this category, right? Behavior means taking actions that will get me feeling comfortable through discomfort, allow me to catch myself with certain patterns, and generally just rewire my mental framework and self-talk from the outside inwards, right? So addressing my own hypocritical behavior and projection, getting myself comfortable with taking up space metaphorically, catching myself when I'm being a bit of a narcissist, as I mentioned before, and pushing myself to engage in situations with other guys and making male friends and all that, all fall under this category. And now finally, the development category refers to making changes in behavior and striving towards goals that develop my own self-respect, shifting the focus from an insecure obsession with the opinions of others inwards towards my own feelings on who I am as a person, right? And this is an insight that I had that I think is really important, because with all the other things that I'm talking about, they still are in relation to other people, right? I'm still addressing this problem and I'm beginning to take steps towards solving this problem, but all of those other points are from the angle of other people. What have other people done to me? How can I accept that other people feel this way or don't feel this way about me? How do I feel about this hierarchy with other people, right? There are all these things that tie into these feelings of inferiority, but that again are all from the perspective, the angle of other people. I don't think that that is a complete solution. And so that's why I added this additional part, these um, additional 2 points, because I think that it is important to, along with that, also shift the focus, right? So that maybe think at first, why am I even thinking so much about the opinions and obsessing over the thoughts of other people anyway? It's because there's something lacking within myself. And so that's what I want to address with these points, right? And that's what I think is really important. And I'm still thinking about it because I don't know if this might even be more important, if these 2 points might be more important than the other 8 steps that I'll be taking, right? And so that's something I'm going to keep an eye on as I continue to work on this, because maybe it's not even as necessary to address all the other parts if I can just begin to work on myself. I still do think that they are necessary, but I'm curious as to what the balance between them is and how they compare. And so, yeah, I think this might be one of the most important categories, because it goes a long way towards shifting the reason why I'm doing any of this in the first place. I'm not improving myself out of a feeling of insecurity. I'm improving myself because I want to have an amount of self-respect and standards for myself. I want to change my own opinion of myself and my own feelings of myself, right? Rather than looking outwards, looking inwards. And so committing to things like honesty, integrity, and challenging myself and working to achieve competency in something both fall under this category, because by living honestly, right? By doing the hard thing, by challenging myself, by pushing myself to do things that I didn't think I could do, right? By achieving things, by putting in effort into anything, right? And seeing the rewards of that, I will begin to gain an amount of confidence and feeling of security within myself before anyone else even comes into the picture, right? And that same thing ties in with just achieving an amount of competency in something, because I think once you become competent in something, you don't you don't need to, I guess, search for that same kind of obsessive validation, right? And there's nothing wrong with caring about other people, the opinions of other people, and validation, right? But there are points where it becomes unhealthy. And so I think having this foundation is important to prevent it from reaching an unhealthy state. And so this is something that I'm very glad that I kind of like had an insight towards, that I stumbled across. And so yeah, so these are like the 3 main areas that I think, after all this consolidation and thought, these are the 3 main areas that I think will be helpful in terms of addressing these feelings of inferiority. So trying to really understand how and why these behaviors happened. Where are these patterns from? What are the experiences that led here? And what is the narrative that you're telling about yourself? And then going in and examining that, and if possible, kind of working to change that, right? Especially once you understand things, it becomes easier. But also changing the stories that you tell yourself, re-examining your memories and your experiences now with a new perspective, right? I think that's all helpful. From there, actual behavioral changes. Changing your behaviors, acknowledging, like recognizing when you're doing things, catching yourself when when you're doing a bad habit, or when you are acting on a pattern, right? Catching yourself, making the small changes in behavior that will allow you to get yourself to a different place, right? And then finally, development, shifting the perspective from just focusing on the outside inwards, right? Focus on improving yourself and on changing, before the opinions of anyone else, your own opinion of yourself. Gain an amount of self-respect, an amount of self-love, an amount of just having those standards set for yourself, and assigning yourself a standard that you can live up to, so that then you have confidence and, again, respect in just your ability to achieve that standard, right? And that, I think, will shift the focus from being so intensely and obsessively on other people towards yourself. And so those 3 things, I think, are possibly, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I think those are generally helpful towards addressing these kinds of feelings. In terms of the actual specific steps that I mentioned before, I think those are particular to my situation, right? Those are particular to my own upbringing, my experiences, and my feelings currently, right? But I do think that those steps will be helpful for myself as well. And so with this, that's kind of, I guess, my journey so far into recognizing this problem, understanding the problem, and trying to create steps and find a solution for the problem. Now the next part is just to act on it, right? Now the next part is actually doing it, taking those steps. And I'm looking forward just to see how that goes. But yeah, I think I'm hoping that this is something that is helpful to someone. I think I've never seen anyone kind of go into anything like this, and even for myself, this is all very personal, and I don't particularly like the idea of like getting all this out, but at the same time, if it can help someone, then I think that would be great. Also, maybe no one will ever see it, who knows. But the point is, I think I've made some significant progress throughout these last like week and a half, 2 weeks that I've done this, and I'm excited to see going forward what changes will be made, what progress I'll make. Um, so yeah, hopefully this has helped you, and I will, be back making more videos. I'll see what the next topic is, since this one was kind of a set. Yeah.